I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election.
That was President Trump back in 2017 tying the firing of FBI Director James Comey to the Russia probe. According to the Times report that we've been discussing this morning, that was one of the two instances in which the president tied the firing of Comey to the Russia investigation, helped prompt the counterintelligence aspect of the inquiry. The other was a letter Mr. Trump wanted to send to Mr. Comey about his firing, but never did, in which he mentioned the Russia investigation. Even after the Deputy Attorney General Rod J. Rosenstein wrote a more restrained draft of the letter and told Mr. Trump that he did not have to mention the Russia investigation. Mr. Trump directed Mr. Rosenstein to mention the Russia investigation anyway. On the heels of this report in the New York Times, our next guest puts forth the following thought. Observers of the Russia investigation have generally understood Special Counsel Robert Mueller's work as focusing on at least two separate tracks: collusion between the Russian government and the Trump campaign on the one hand, and potential obstruction of justice by the president on the other. But what if the obstruction was the collusion, or at least part of it? Joining us now, Editor-in-Chief of Lawfare and MSNBC legal analyst Benjamin Wittes. Also with us, former acting U.S. Solicitor General in the Obama administration, now Professor of Law at Georgetown University, attorney Neil Katyal. And Casey Hunt and Nick Confessori are back with us as well. Benjamin Wittes, so what if they are connected? It does appear all of this ends up in one place, which is that the Russians potentially have compromising information on the president, or they have some hold on him.
Or at least that the FBI was sufficiently worried on that score in the spring of 2017 to take the unprecedented step, as far as we know in American history, of opening a counterintelligence inquiry against the President of the United States.
So do we know if that investigation is still open, or is it closed?
Well, what we know is that in the days following the FBI's decision to open this investigation, Rod Rosenstein turned around and appointed Bob Mueller, who inherited every component of the investigation that the FBI was conducting that Jim Comey had announced in front of Congress in March, which is to say all aspects related to Russian interference in the 2016 election, as well as any coordination with or collaboration with that effort on the U.S. side and any efforts to obstruct the investigation. So we know that Bob Mueller inherited this investigation. We know that he pursued it aggressively in the sense that we have a lot of evidence of White House people being interviewed by Mueller about the president's interactions with law enforcement, and we know that it is part of something that the president's lawyers have kind of responded to aggressively. So we know it was investigated. Right. What we don't know is what, if any, conclusions he has drawn.
Neil Katyal, do you think the counterintelligence investigation is over? And also, given these stories, the New York Times piece, the Washington Post piece, all these pieces of information that are coming out, is someone trying to send somebody a message?
Yeah,
and
so
what would it be?
We don't know whether the investigation's over. Mueller runs a famously, tight ship. And so, everyone's speculating. But, counterintelligence investigations in general, when I saw them at the Justice Department, went on for a long time because sources and methods, it takes time to develop an investigation. Now, I think that the big point here is what Ben is suggesting, which is that the two parts of the investigation are colliding. The two remarkable stories over this weekend are not only that the president is under suspicion from the FBI of possibly being a Russian asset, but also, as you were talking about earlier in your program, that Trump has been Putin one-on-one and having those notes destroyed. And I can't imagine an innocent explanation for this. I mean, whenever I have a sensitive meeting, either when I was in the government or out, I'd always want a witness. Why? Because otherwise I'd be worried about compromise. I'd be worried that other person in the meeting would say, oh, you did X or Y. The only people who don't have witnesses at their meetings are the guilty.
So Ben, this is a really, really important point that Neil just made. So if you look at the New York Times story about the predicate for the investigation, which, as you described in your introduction, was about the Bedminster letter that was written but never sent, and then the Lester Holt interview, there's this sequence of things that happen after that, including the revelation that the president had, boasted about the firing of Comey to the Russian foreign minister and ambassador, saying that he'd relieved a lot of pressure on himself in doing so, and then up to and including these numerous meetings to which Neil refers, in which he won't even let senior government officials know what was discussed or talked or have notes of the meeting. And so all of those, to go back to your question, would independently themselves drive counterintelligence concerns on this score. That doesn't answer the question of what happened to the investigation, but I do think, following Neil's point, if you look at those incidents and you say the FBI was concerned enough to open this inquiry in the first instance, would the subsequent activity alleviate or exacerbate concern? I think that question kind of answers itself.
So, Neil, take these new facts and just kind of reframe for us which things about investigation that we know about publicly now seem more clear. What mysteries might be resolved, kind of knowing that there might be a different focus here? And does the question of why the president would act this way become somehow less important than the fact that he did act this way?
Honestly, I think that's too hard to answer at this point, just given the dribbles of information we have. I mean, the dribbles we have are really quite extraordinary. A sitting president being fingered by the FBI. You already also have prosecutors in New York saying the president ordered the commission of various crimes with the Michael Cohen campaign finance. So all of these different strands together are very serious. I can't answer your specifics about where the counterintelligence piece of the investigation goes, but I do think what we are seeing is teeing up to the Attorney General, to Mueller, the question, what do you do when you have a president who's been accused, or it looks like could be accused, of very serious felonies, and indeed, apart from felonies, acting against the interests of the United States?
Highly unusual. There's also growing interest among some in Congress over a potential deal that would have involved Donald Trump putting another Trump Tower just outside of Russia's capital. Two congressional aides have told NBC News that House and Senate investigators are focusing on the project with which Trump sought to complete before his presidential nomination. According to congressional testimony and reports, the Russians named the proposed developments Manhattan, and a Trump Tower would have been its centerpiece. Trump's partner in the project would have been the Russian oligarch Aras Agalarov. Agalarov is believed to have close ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin and is the same man who promised dirt on Hillary Clinton, which led to the infamous June 2016 meeting in the New York Trump Tower. A lawyer for Agalarov tells NBC News it's leading to suggest that his client is close to Putin, but declined to respond to specific questions. The congressional aides say that the Agalarov project is drawing fresh scrutiny following the revelation in court documents that President Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, lied to Congress about his dealings on a separate, competing Russia real estate project. And Casey Hunt, Elijah Cummings was on 60 Minutes yesterday, and he was talking about just how many different tracks there are going here in terms of trying to issue a subpoena or figure out what questions to ask. It's going to be extremely tough because there is so much
It's overwhelming, Mika. And, you know, I think that this is a great example of something that, you know, we may be learning about simply because Democrats took back the House. And, you know, it's been how many weeks since that's been the case? And this seems to me to be pretty significant because of the connection that you laid out just there. It's yet another example of the level of closeness that this president had to this Russian man who also offered